The Turbo Boost Phase 2 has officially begun on live servers for WoW. Now, what does this mean? It means that we now have access to vendors that allow us to buy gear, the items that we want. Obviously, you can only buy a limited amount. It also means crests are uncapped, meaning that you can infinitely farm crests indefinitely to power up your character as much as you want without any restrictions per week. It also means Valor Stones are transferable now. You can take them and steal them from your alts. I've already done that, but basically you can take them from your alts and funnel them over to your main. Now, luckily, Valor Stones are going away in the future. This is the last time you're ever going to have to think about Valor Stones. So, fucking W. So how does this work? When you log in, there's going to be a little scroll on the wall here outside of the bank, and you can pick this up. Now, defeating any 4 bosses within the raid on normal or higher, or any 4 dungeons will reward you with 3 chips. Now, it's unique because it says you can have 200 of them. And I believe there was a bug that was letting players do the quest multiple times. I don't know if they fixed that already. But basically, once you complete this quest by, clearing 4 dungeons or clearing 4 bosses, you're going to be able to buy gear from the vendor. Now, there's 2 of them. There's the heroic goods vendor and there's the mythic goods vendor. Now, there's some conditions for buying this gear. You have had to clear that, like that level of content for that vendor. So you've had to kill heroic bosses or killing mythic bosses to get the loot you want. So as long as you've done that, your gear is going to be purchasable. Now, for example, I haven't killed Mythic Dimensius yet, so my character cannot buy Screams of the Forgotten Sky or the All-Devouring Nucleus or the Band of Shattered Souls. But everything else is fair game. I have completed the content. So in this video, I wanted to spend a little time talking about what Brewmasters or maybe some tanks will want to buy, and some good options if you're someone like me who has everything they pretty much want, and Dinars don't really benefit you. Because there's just some fun things to play with, and one thing to keep in mind is that this is the most powerful gear you're going to be able to get going into midnight. So if you're someone, let's say you're someone who's done all the raiding they want to do and done all the dungeons they want to do and got their IO score or whatever, and you're done with the season, this you can at least prepare for leveling in midnight. So buying like a powerful damage trinket as a tank or as even just a DPS that does a lot of on-demand burst could be really good. I'm kind of hinting at something, but let's talk about our options. So for the raid, my first go-to recommendation for anyone who doesn't already have it is Brand of Ceaseless Ire. This is a trinket that is a wild portion of your overall damage and healing in any given fight, encounter, raid, dungeon, whatever. You just have to have it. I even last season, there was nothing last season where I was like, you have to have this. This is, you should have a brand. It's very good and it's very fun. Besides that, everything else is kind of based on whatever your goals are for the remainder of the season. I'm going to try to give some specific examples, but I'm just going to talk about each good option, that at least in my opinion, and talk about why I would actually choose it over other things. And we're going to talk about raid, and then we'll talk about dungeons. So starting off, some of this earlier stuff is kind of like not that important because you can farm it if you're in a guild that's re-clearing, or I just don't think it's that impactful. So let's start with Soulbinder's Embrace. It's a pretty small absorb and damage mitigation trinket. I don't think there's a world where you ever really want to run this unless you're doing some prog keys where you're like, well, there's some stuff in here that I need to learn how to live, and having an extra defensive could be good. Now, the thing is there's other better defensive options, so I would generally stay away from this one. Now, oddly enough, Lumithar's Living Silk, if you're a player who doesn't have anything else to buy because you have everything, this could be a fun trinket to mess with. It gives your allies a sizable absorb shield that provides a 75% DR until it's broken on a 1.5-minute cooldown. Now, it gives haste. That's obviously bad. It's probably decent for Mistweaver. But having this for like a low key just to flex, or for raid for like healing parts, is probably pretty fun to utilize, but I wouldn't recommend buying it. Now, Astral Antenna to me is a trinket that is the worst of its kind. And what I mean by that is it's a critical strike trinket that requires you to collect orbs. Now, multiple applications can overlap, so you can get a very sizable amount of crit if you're lucky, or if you make sure you're picking up every orb. Now, sometimes orbs go and they're missed because they spawn as you're leaving a pole and you don't notice it, or it clips, or it gets stuck on a wall. Like, there's just weird bugs with Astral Antenna and weird, like, gimmicky things. So if you were going to run a crit trinket, I believe there's better options like Curstone Idol or C4E and Pacemaker. But it's also not bad for Windwalker. So You know, if you want to buy it, but I wouldn't recommend it. Ritual Forge is good in a very, very few scenarios. It's a 2-minute cooldown. It's only really strong if you're playing Master of Harmony, going for like really big 2-minute bursts, but then you don't want to run Call to Arms because you want everything to line up. I've played with this trinket both in Raid and in Keys and have done very well with it, but it's just clunky because you generally run, not Call to Arms, sorry, Chi Surge. And when you run Chi Surge, you're going to get cooldown reduction on your weapons, which means it's not going to line up with the trinket every time, and it's kind of like hard to resync them. But kind of a fun trinket on a 2-minute cooldown. I would stay away from Sigil of the Cosmic Hunt. Not that it's bad, but you just would, if you're going to play this, you're just going to play Tome of Light's Devotion. And then the last trinket that, I guess actually two, Unyielding Nether Prism is kind of sleeper, I think. It doesn't give any stats baseline, but every like 10 seconds in combat, you're going to gain stacks of latent power, or latent power, that give you massive amounts of agility on use. So think of like Spymaster's Web from Season 1 for casters, but this is for agility and strength users. And so you can use this to line up with every Weapons of Order, or using it for smaller burst windows like with Chi Burst or Exploding Keg as Master of Harmony to get really big like bursty damage on a 30-second CD that you can just hit this and then hit, Chi Surge. Or Chi Burst. Fuck, I keep saying the wrong thing. Fun sleeper trinket. Now, if you're someone who's starting to think about leveling for the next expansion or really want to just do big damage in keys, this Perfidious Projector is pretty insane as a trinket. I have one on normal. So actually, let me show you guys. I think I've done this before, but I'm going to show you guys how much damage this can do on normal, let alone, and it's not even turbo boosted. Like I looted this like week 1. Yeah, let me go show you. So let's reset our data and then hit the trinket, and it's going to spawn this guy, spawn a bunch of men, and then it's going to do a bunch of damage. And to 5 targets, I just did 30 mil. Now, this is of course because, it's a 704 trinket. It does a lot of damage on a 2-minute or a minute or 2-minute cooldown. So it could be fun to level with, could be fun to do like low keys with. Do I recommend buying it for the average person? Absolutely not. But if you're someone who's like, I kind of want something like really bursty to level with, like that is the thing I would recommend going into midnight. So the last thing I want to talk about from the raid are the boots, because I think these boots, while they are very powerful and impactful to your survivability, they aren't the best boots for damage. You could probably find a way to get more damage from like other boots if you happen to loot them on Mythic Track, or maybe you have a crafted boot with an embellishment on it. But if you're someone who is pushing high keys, pushing like end game rating, having these boots, probably not a bad idea. And so if you're someone who doesn't have brand or boots, those are probably the first 2 purchases before you can start thinking about any of this other stuff. When it comes to weapons, I would actually recommend buying a dungeon weapon instead, which is something that we haven't seen last season, and it's new this season. So let's talk about some of the dungeon gear really quick, and then we'll talk about the weapon. Actually, fuck it, we'll talk about the weapon now. Harvester's Interdiction is probably the best thing you can get your hands on. It's really good stat weights. It's going to be on Mythic Track, and you're not losing anything for the additional damage. So while this equip effect only ends up being like maybe 0.1, 0.3, 0.5 of your overall damage, depending on the encounter you're in, it's still free damage. And so if that's something you're concerned with, also having good stat weights, this is probably the thing you're going to want to buy. And personally for me, I'm probably going to buy it. Now, weapons weren't on the vendor last season, so this is something that I wasn't expecting. So yeah, this is all good. You can buy any weapon you want, though. If you want something like the If you want something like the Starforged Seraph's Mace, it's all crit verse. You can also get the Sail Carver, which is also crit verse. Both fine options. But yeah, those are the weapons I would recommend if you're looking to buy a weapon. Now, last but not least, let's talk about trinkets for dungeons. The first thing I would recommend is probably Curstone Idol. This is technically a Windwalker trinket, but it is the most popular thing that Brewmasters are using in keys to get a good bit of burst. Now, it's an on-use. You have to channel it, which is a little annoying, but it gives you a ton of crit for 15 seconds, and it does a ton of damage to nearby enemies, and you get increased crit per enemy hits. So even at 707, you're gaining almost, you can max it out at like 10k crit, which is pretty strong. And it's probably one of the better crit trinkets for your damage profile, because Brewmasters are very like minute 20, minute 30 front loaded, where they're going to do a ton of damage in their Weapons of Order window, and then they're going to kind of like just chill. And so getting all that crit in that window is really, really good. Now, alternatively, I also think Sephorian Pacemaker, if you don't want to play with the on use, is also a totally fine trinket to play with. It gives you crit for 15 seconds once a minute. That gets extended per critical strike you have, extending it up to 15 times, or 15 seconds. So you have a 50% uptime on this trinket. It's generally going to line up with most Weapons of Order windows, or most of your Chi Bursts and Exploding Kegs in combat. So you should have good uptime on this. It should be applied to you during critical moments in combat. This is probably a safer choice if you don't like playing with an on-use channel. So yeah, Tome of Light's Devotion. If you are a raider who's progging like single target or going for parses or whatever, this is a great trinket for that. Outside of raiding, it's not going to be good, except with leveling in Midnight in mind. If you're someone who like me, who just levels his brew, I don't swap to Windwalker for leveling because I just like to pull really big and my touch of death is better and all that stuff. Tome of Light's Devotion is going to be really, really good for leveling. Probably you're going to use this, unless they nerf it, of course, but you're just going to use this all the way up to pretty much level 90 because of how much damage it can do in single target as you're just killing just world mobs. So just something to keep in mind at the back of your head, like if you don't raid or you're done with raiding or whatever it might be. If you have Dinar laying around before Midnight comes out, just maybe throw some of your coins at a tome. The last thing I would say is Ringing Ritual Mud is not bad for someone who likes to have a tank trinket in their arsenal, something that allows them to have a big fat absorb on them. It gives you a shield for 14.5 mil, which is like 60-70% of your health. It also will scale with your crit and verse, so it could be even stronger than that. It does a little bit of damage, and you get cooldown reduction on this trinket every time you take periodic damage that isn't stagger. So if you have a dot on you, if you're taking any kind of environmental ticking damage, there's a lot of dungeons this season that do that. Floodgate historically has been really good. Like when you're linked together on Swamp Face, for example, you're going to get cooldown. You can use this trinket every minute. Very strong. And so yeah, those are all of the options I think you would want to spend Dinar on, but what you end up spending it on is totally up to you. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Peace.